Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Well, since the onset of the remote working revolution, businesses and their employees have been exploring new technologies to assist with their work duties. One company whose partnership with Google has helped clients to migrate to Google's technology solutions is Damson Cloud. Fintan Murphy, the founder of Damson Cloud, joins us now to discuss this growth. Fintan, I know that you started the business at the tender age of 19, so I'd like to find out who or what during your childhood inspired you to follow the path of self-employment.
Good morning, Carl. Thanks very much for having me. Yeah, I think it was kind of something I always wanted to do, Carl. My grandfather owned his own business, and I was kind of inspired by him. And although I had two parents who were teachers and didn't maybe have the business side of things or entrepreneurial side of things in their blood, it was definitely in mine. I remember in school getting in trouble for reading the buy and sell, if you remember that, at reading time.
And at the age of 19, you set up your own business, Damson. Bring us back to that time and the thinking behind it and what your vision for that business was.
Yeah, it was before the days of cloud. So the original business was Damson Technologies. And it was really that interest in technology. I always loved taking things apart and fixing things. I loved when we got new tech. We were very lucky. My parents bought a computer in the early days. And the first thing I wanted to do was take that thing to bits to see how it worked. I always had to know how things worked. And at the time, the government had funded computers in schools, but not really thought about the maintenance side of things. And there wasn't really, the capacity in the IT companies that existed to sort of support that. And a lot of the schools couldn't afford it, so I was providing cheap IT maintenance, really. And then my brother was the kind of real technical person. He was IT manager in a publishing company. And eventually I convinced him, come on over to this entrepreneurial thing and let's kind of give this a real go. And that was how we started Damson Technologies. And it was primarily in the education space, and then eventually moved out into into businesses, and then the cloud came kind of later. That was sort of 10 years on from then.
Okay, so bring us up to date now in 2022. Describe what the business does now.
We kind of joke it's the overnight success that took 10 years or 20 years. And I can remember, 11 years ago, Donald saying to me, my brother and business partner, that, we need to get behind this cloud thing. Web 2.0 as it was kind of called then. This is the future of technology and of the, particularly business technology. And, it was, I always used to say, I just sold what Donald did. It was his kind of brains behind that type of thing. And we partnered with Google very early on. They didn't have a sort of partnership or channel, as they call it, initially. And then they did. And I can remember the day that Google launched the partner program, because we danced around the office because we thought there was a business model around what we were trying to do. And at the time, we were selling very traditional tech, servers and, computers and stuff. And so moving to this cloud stuff, you're talking about 10 years ago. I know it's a common word now and people understand it. But back then, people kind of thought we were a little bit crazy. And, it was the recurring revenue in that model. And it was that kind of drove the business, just building upon that year over year over year. And now, as we were saying, the business has just seen dramatic growth, obviously, with the pandemic.
And of course, your aim is to help companies master remote working in the digital age. So in some respects, the pandemic was a godsend.
It was, yeah. We had seen growth before then, and definitely, things were on an upward trajectory. And when the pandemic hit, we were the same as all businesses. We panicked and we pulled in, and curtailed spending. And then we started to get calls, and we started to get customers saying, "You guys have been working remotely, Damson, for 10 years. How do we, how do we help our staff who are now working remotely with this technology, Google, that you guys resell?" And we started doing lots of training and change management. And our customers, loads of our customers who are also sort of tech natives or digital natives, they began to grow rapidly as well. And so they needed our help migrating data and moving, we migrate the information from the old system over to Google system, and training their staff and doing things like digital transformation workshops. And security was a big thing. I mean, everybody remembers the HSE ransomware attack, and there was lots of those type of things happening. And so we had lots of customers saying, while our staff are working remotely, we need to secure our systems, and Damson, we need your help to do that. So they're kind of our set of services as well. And we just had more demand for them than we had ever seen. And we went from 2 staff to nearly a dozen staff in less than 18 months.
And while all of us in business use Google on a daily basis, I think very few of us actually understand the full remit and the full scale of the workspace products that Google have on offer.
Yeah, and I think that's, the kind of digital native businesses we work with are the ones that kind of get that. Do you know what I mean? Like if you pick any of the top tech companies, whether it's your Ubers or your Netflix or your Spotifys, they're all companies that use Google's tools. They tend to shy away from Microsoft's tools because Google's allows them to grow at such a rapid pace. And a lot of people don't realize actually, often that Google even has sort of these business tools and that everyone from one-man bands right up to companies with tens of thousands of employees can use. And it's everything from email to calendars to video conferencing, and collaboration solutions like Google Drive and Google Docs. And it's solutions like that help organizations to stay connected. And I mean, many of our staff, one of our customers, Faroiga, we did an interview with them over the pandemic, a youth organization, 6,000 volunteers across Ireland. And they said the investment in Google over the last 10 years, they've been on Google for over a decade, allowed them to transition almost seamlessly in terms of their staff to remote working. And other organizations were turning to them saying, how have you guys done this? Because many organizations didn't have that infrastructure to support the remote working.
And when it comes to Google tools, is there much adaptation and customization required of them for businesses in general?
Yeah, good question. I mean, the free set of tools are, sign up for a Gmail account, and that's the sort of free version in the same way as your sort of Outlook or hotmail.com, as it used to be, is the sort of free version of Microsoft. And then the paid for versions kind of start as low as sort of, 4 or 5 euros a user a month. And so for small businesses, you can sign up for as low as that, and then right up to kind of the enterprise tool sets that are more expensive at sort of 20, 30 euros a user a month.
For businesses that want to scale fast, they're choosing the Google products to do it. What flexibility and scalability do the Google tools offer that, let's say, Microsoft or others don't?
Yeah, I think it is interesting that sort of rapid growth and rapid growing companies do tend to, when you pick a tech native, you pick any of those sort of top tech companies, they're probably on Google. Do you know what I mean? I just think that's really interesting. And often when you talk to those companies, they say, well, it's the flexibility, it's the collaboration, it's the ease of use. I always feel Microsoft has familiarity because everybody's used it for maybe the last 10 or 20 years in their jobs. But actually, when it comes to ease of use, and if you were to give, a Gmail account or Google Drive account to, a kid or something like that and say, just use that, they would probably find that easier. And also, when it comes to colleges, Google have almost, I think something like 70%, 80% of the market when it comes to colleges. So the young people who are leaving those colleges and going into jobs, they're all people who are, primarily familiar with Google's tools, not Microsoft's. And so there's that shift change. That's Google playing the long game from a decade ago. And that's coming to fruition now, really, in my mind.
And when you compare the toolkits between Microsoft and Google, what's the difference?
The primary one, if I was to sort of, hang my hat on something, it would be the collaboration piece within Google. And as I said, the ease of use. And that comes back to the web browser, that I can open up any laptop. You could hand me your laptop, or you could hand me a blank laptop, and I could sign into my Google account and I could access my documents. I could get on a video call. I could chat with people like you would do on Slack or instant messaging. I could access my email, my calendar, absolutely everything, just from a web browser. I don't need to download a single piece of software. I don't need to download Microsoft Teams or Zoom to log onto a call or update the product, which people hate. And it delays people getting on to what they want to do, whether that's a video call or whether that's collaborating on a document. Technology should get out of the way. It should be almost invisible, and that's what Google, strives to do.
And Fintan, typically when you're contacted by a prospective client, what problem do they want you to solve?
Yeah, so like typically customers will come to us. We sort of have our three pillars: migrate, secure, and transform. So generally speaking, customers are coming to us with one of those three problems. They either are thinking about moving to Google, they're on Microsoft, maybe they're frustrated with some of the lack of collaborative tools, or customers will have all sorts of various reasons why they want to move, and they'll want us to help them de-risk that migration. And I always say to customers, your business and we know Google, and it's the combination of those two things is kind of where the magic happens. And we can make sure that the migration and move to Google is as seamless as possible, and that your staff come with you, because I mentioned change management earlier. It's actually the most important part of a Google migration, because you can do all the tech migration stuff, but if you don't bring the people with you, if you don't train them and support them and communicate with them, then they won't use the product. And if they don't use the product, then it was all for nothing. And so that migration piece and that strategy piece is really, really important. And then the secure piece is around customers often who are already on Google, but they're looking to maybe secure the environment more. And so we will work with them and do security reviews. Again, particularly when there's things like ransomware attacks, you often get a spike in those type of things, and customers will want you to help them secure the environment that they have. And then the transform stuff is what gets me excited. That's about transforming the business, and they're workshops that we run, innovation workshops, where we take particular teams and we run these innovation workshops with them to try and help them leverage more from the Google platform. So is there a process that they're doing right now that's extremely manual? There's 27.5 steps in it, and maybe it could be reduced to 3 or 5, and it could be automated, and you could implement it on Google in a much more effective way.
And Fintan, do you feel that augmented and virtual reality will form part of the Google Workspace toolkit in the coming years?
They tested this amazing sort of video window thing that I saw over the pandemic that made it look like the person was actually there. It was like a 3D generated image, and it was incredible. Now, it was very big and very expensive, but you can imagine tools like that eventually, as with all of these things, getting smaller and smaller and more efficient and effective, and eventually being available to something like Google Meet.
And if we look out 5 years from now, how do you think that business tool landscape by Google is going to change?
I think there's going to be more customizability. I think machine learning and AI is going to be embedded into everything, as Google has already kind of started to do that over the last couple of years. I think video conferencing obviously is going to be huge, but almost been able to tell a system what you want. What's the next iteration of low code, no code? Do you know what I mean? What's the next step of that? If before you needed to be a coder in order to build an app, and now you don't, what's the next step? Hey computer, make me this tool.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Fintan Murphy from Damson Cloud, and we wish him continued success with his business.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
South